The name of the story, Lost and Sound. Jay hadn't stepped into a studio in almost 4 years. The air still remembered him, though. Cables coiled like sleeping serpents, the faint tang of metal and dust, the smell of old wood panels and coffee ground into the carpet. He stood in the doorway longer than he meant to, letting the ghosts of frequencies settle in his chest. He couldn't hear the silence, but he felt it pressing against him, like the absence of a storm. Once he had lived for that storm. The rumble of bass in his sternum, the bright flare of melody threading through him like sunlight behind his ribs. He hadn't needed ears. Music had always spoken to his bones. But then came the accident, the kind that shifted life into before and after. The world closed its door of sound, and though he still felt rhythms, the courage to shape them into something had drained away. That was why he avoided places like this. Studios, stages, rehearsal halls, they whispered accusations. You abandoned us. But today was different. Today he was here not for himself, but for someone else. The studio's manager had texted him last week. Come by Tuesday. I want you to meet a violinist. She's got something I think you'll understand. Jay almost ignored it, the way he ignored most invitations. Yet something about the phrasing snagged him. Understand, not here. Now, as he shifted the strap of his worn backpack and stepped fully inside, he saw her. She was already playing. The bow cut across strings like a blade through water, and though Jay could not hear her, he could see her. The body spoke in ways sound never could, shoulders rising, wrist bending, a tremor of chin as she leaned into the instrument. Vibrations traveled through the air. He felt them faintly through the floorboards, thrumming against his soles. She finished a phrase, eyes closed, and then opened them to notice him. For a second, neither moved. Her gaze was quicksilver, assessing, curious, a little wary. She lowered the bow. You must be Jay, she said, accent curling around the words. He nodded once, giving a brief smile. He tapped 2 fingers against his chest, then gestured in a wave meant as greeting. From his backpack, he pulled a small notebook, flipping to a fresh page. Yes, Jay. He held it up. Her eyes softened, and she nodded in return. Camila. The manager, hovering at the edge of the room, clapped his hands once. Good. You two should talk. I think there's something here. Then he slipped out, leaving them standing in the space like mismatched puzzle pieces. Jay motioned toward her violin, eyebrows raised. May I? Camila hesitated, then handed it over carefully. He didn't attempt to play. Instead, he cradled it against his palm, feeling the faint resonance of the strings. He closed his eyes and let the hum settle into him. Then he returned it. You feel it, Camila said slowly, as if realizing something. Jay scribbled in his notebook. Always. My whole life. Her lips parted. Then maybe you can understand me better than most. Something in her tone made Jay lift his head. For the first time in years, he felt the door inside him creak open, the one that led to creation. But he only wrote, Show me more. And so she did. Camila lifted her bow again, meeting his eyes before striking the strings. She leaned into each phrase, as though daring him to keep up. Jay tapped his palm against his thigh in response, finding rhythm through movement. She noticed. Her eyes flicked down, then back up. A silent conversation began, his hand keeping tempo, her bow answering in kind. No words, no sound, only rhythm, breath, and the gravity of watching each other. When the final note faded, or rather, when the final vibration dissolved, they stood suspended in its absence. Camila lowered her bow. I think, she said softly, we speak the same language. Jay, heart hammering, wrote a single word. Yes. The studio smelled of sawdust and faint varnish, a reminder of instruments old and new passing through. Jay sat across from Camila now, notebook open, pen tapping against the page in a steady rhythm. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. So tell me something, she said. What do you miss the most? He paused. The pen hovered, then dragged across the paper. The small things? Voices. Footsteps. Rain. Her lips pressed together. She nodded slowly, as if holding his loss in her own hands. I grew up in Miami. Every night, my father played boleros on his old guitar. The windows open, the air thick with humidity. I used to fall asleep to it. If I lost that, I don't know who I'd be. Jay studied her expression, wistful, tender, and realized she understood more than most ever tried. Not the mechanics of silence, but the ache of absence. He wrote, "And yet you play." She smiled faintly. "And yet you create." They tried again. Camila suggested, "Let's experiment. I'll play a phrase. You answer with whatever you feel." Jay nodded, fingers poised over his laptop. She lifted her violin, her bow trembling at first like a breath before speech, then cascading into a clear, upward climb. He couldn't hear the pitch, but he felt the shift, her shoulders pulling taut, her chest expanding. Jay hit a key, a deep bass kick, one he trusted to rattle the floor. The platform beneath them vibrated like a pulse. Camila laughed mid-note. "Yes, that's it." They kept going, her bow darting like a bird, his beats pounding like earth beneath wings. The room filled with their unspoken dialogue, a fusion of vibrations and motion. Jay's notebook lay forgotten at his side. They didn't need it now. When at last the rhythm collapsed into silence, both stood flushed with effort. Camila's curls clung to her forehead, and Jay's chest heaved, though no sound had passed his lips. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, not strangers anymore, but something like co-conspirators. The studio door creaked open. The manager leaned in, eyebrows raised. "Well, what did I tell you?" Camila and Jay exchanged a glance. She said, "We're just getting started." Jay wrote quickly, "This could work." The manager grinned. "Then I'll leave you to it." Later, after Camila packed her violin into its velvet-lined case, Jay hesitated before writing his next words. He tapped his pen against the page, erased, then finally wrote, "I don't usually stay. I don't usually try, but today I want to." Camila paused, reading carefully. Her eyes lifted, warm and unwavering. "Then stay." Something inside him shifted. He hadn't let himself belong anywhere for years, not since silence swallowed his world. Now, standing in the faint glow of evening light, he realized he might not have to walk alone anymore. That night, back in his small apartment, Jay couldn't sleep. The walls felt too still, the city outside too far away. He pulled his laptop close, staring at blank measures on the screen. His fingers hovered, hesitant, then struck a key. The bass thudded against the floor. His body remembered, and in that moment, he imagined Camila's bow dancing, her gaze steady on his, her violin carrying his unfinished thoughts into sound. For the first time in 4 years, Jay began to compose. The next day, Jay arrived earlier than planned. He sat at the edge of the studio platform, tapping a slow rhythm on his knee. The vibrations of yesterday's session still lingered in him, like echoes refusing to fade. Camila entered with her violin case slung over one shoulder. She stopped when she saw him there, waiting. A smile flickered across her face. "You came back," she said. Jay pulled out his notebook. "You told me to stay." She set her case down, meeting his eyes. "And you listened." They began without much talk. Camila played a soft, winding phrase, something close to a lullaby. Jay answered with a low, steady beat. A heartbeat stretched into rhythm. She smiled at the way it fit, adjusted her bow, and pushed the melody higher. The silent dialogue deepened. Jay moved closer, letting the platform carry her sound through him. Camila leaned forward, matching his tempo with fierce precision. Their eyes locked, every shift a question, every vibration an answer. It wasn't performance. It was discovery. When the final note trembled into stillness, Camila lowered her bow. "You feel music differently than anyone I've met." Jay scribbled, "And you play like you're speaking." Her cheeks warmed at that, but she didn't look away. Maybe we're both saying what words can't. For the first time in years, Jay didn't feel broken. He felt understood. The third time they met, Camila brought something new. From her bag, she pulled out a small black box and set it on the floor. "It's a vibration speaker," she explained. "I used it once for a dance project. Thought of you." Jay crouched, curious. She connected it to his laptop, then pressed her hand against the wooden floor as the bass line pulsed through it. The sound traveled into the ground, into their bones. Jay's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. He typed a quick line on his screen and turned it to her. "Now the room plays with us." Camila laughed, a warm sound he could only imagine but feel in the light in her eyes. Exactly. They experimented for hours. Jay built loops, and Camila layered violin phrases over them, each note rippling across the floor. Sometimes she stopped mid-phrase, watching his reaction, the way his hands marked time, the way his chest rose when the resonance struck deep. Once, she knelt beside him on the platform. "Here," she said, guiding his palm to the violin's body as she drew the bow. The wood thrummed against his skin, intimate and alive. Jay closed his eyes. For a moment, he wasn't deaf. He wasn't broken. He was inside the music again. When he opened his eyes, Camila was still holding the note, watching him with an intensity that made the air between them hum. He pulled back gently, scribbling on his pad. "Careful. I might never let go." Her smile softened. Maybe that's the point. By evening, the manager peeked in again, shaking his head with disbelief. "You two are onto something. I don't know what, but it's big." Jay only half registered the words. He was already lost in the rhythm, lost in the possibility that had been missing for years. And as Camila packed up to leave, she turned at the door. "Tomorrow." Jay lifted his notebook, already written, "Tomorrow." Jay hadn't felt anticipation like this in years. The next morning, he woke before sunrise, hands restless. He brewed coffee, though he barely drank it, pacing his apartment until it was time to leave. Every vibration in the city, the rumble of buses, the thud of footsteps in the stairwell, felt like a prelude to something. When he arrived at the studio, Camila was already there, rosining her bow. She glanced up, grinning. "I thought I'd beat you." Jay smirked, jotting on his pad. "I couldn't stay away." Her eyes lingered on the words a beat too long before she tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "Good, because I brought something for us." From her bag, she pulled out sheet music, handwritten, pages covered in sweeping notations. "It's a piece I've been working on for months. Never finished it. I think," she hesitated, then met his gaze. "I think it needs you." They spread the sheets across the table. Jay traced the staves with his finger, not reading notes the way a trained musician would, but following her gestures as she explained, where the melody rose, where she wanted the pulse to deepen. He tapped the rhythm against the table, nodding as the vibrations built in his chest. Camila leaned closer, her voice low but insistent. "Do you see it? The structure?" Jay wrote, "I don't just see. I feel where it wants to go." And then, before he could second-guess himself, he began building it on his laptop, layering beats, weaving textures. Camila joined in, bow darting, testing fragments of melody against his pulse. The room filled again with that strange, wordless electricity, two different languages colliding, finding a common heartbeat. When they finally stopped, Camila dropped into a chair, laughing breathlessly. "I think we just started something." Jay's hand trembled slightly as he wrote, "It's alive." Her smile lingered. "So are you." And Jay realized she was right. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Evenings at the studio became their ritual. Some nights, they worked for hours, Camila bowing until her arm ached, Jay looping beats until the floor trembled under them both. Other nights, they barely touched their instruments, just sitting cross-legged on the wooden platform, trading fragments of their lives through gestures and notes scribbled in his pad. Camila told him about her grandmother's house in Havana. The cracked tiles, the smell of fried plantains, the way music spilled out of every doorway. She spoke with her hands as much as her voice, painting images he could almost feel. Jay shared less, but what he gave her was real. Memories of lying as a boy with headphones pressed tight, chest thrumming with bass, the accident that left him in silence, the long months afterward where he couldn't face music without breaking. She listened without pity. That mattered more than he could explain. One evening, she set her violin down mid-practice and looked at him intently. "Can I ask you something?" Jay lifted his brows. "Why did you stop? You can still create." I see it every time we play. But before me, why nothing? The pen scratched across paper slower this time. Because music left me, and I didn't want to chase what didn't want me back. Camila read, her throat tightening. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand lightly on his. Maybe it wasn't gone. Maybe it was waiting. Jay didn't move, but he felt the weight of her words vibrate through him like a low, steady note. Later, when they packed up for the night, she turned at the door. You know, she said softly, you don't have to do this alone anymore. And though Jay said nothing, he carried those words with him long after she left, the echo filling the silence of his apartment like a promise. The next morning, Jay arrived at the studio and found Camila already playing softly, her bow sliding over the strings in gentle, deliberate movements. The notes didn't matter. He could feel them through the floor, through his own pulse. He stepped onto the platform, matching her rhythm with a tap of his foot. She glanced up, a smile tugging at her lips. Right on time. Jay opened his notebook. I'm ready. For the first time, it wasn't about fear. It wasn't about proving himself. It was about connection, about creating something neither of them could do alone. Camila's bow lifted, and they dove into the music together, weaving vibrations and movement, pulse and string. Outside, the city stirred. Inside, a new world opened. And in that moment, Jay realized he had found not just music, but sound in the truest sense, in rhythm, in resonance, in the unspoken conversation between them. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. He was no longer lost. Weeks passed. Jay and Camila became inseparable in the studio, communicating entirely through rhythm and glance. Their music was alive, a pulse shared between two bodies that didn't need words. One evening, they prepared for a silent concert. The audience stood on a vibrating platform, headphones optional, as the low hum of Jay's beats carried through the floor. Camila's violin danced above it, every note visible in the shiver of the air. People closed their eyes, feeling the music rather than hearing it. Jay stood beside her, guiding the composition, his body thrumming with every phrase. At the peak of the performance, their connection was unbroken. Eye to eye, pulse to pulse. Jay felt the culmination of years of silence and loss transform into pure expression. The crowd was still, yet the vibrations were deafening in their clarity. Afterward, Camila hugged her violin to her chest. You did it, she whispered, meaning we did it. Jay smiled, scribbling quickly. And we're not done. Months later, their final performance came. The stage was minimal. Jay at his laptop, Camila with her violin. But this time, it wasn't just collaboration. It was creation in full. The solo she played had been composed entirely by him, shaped through their shared rhythm. She raised her bow. The audience waited in hushed anticipation. Jay tapped a beat. She followed, letting his pulse guide every note. Vibrations rolled across the hall. Lights flickered with the rhythm. Every person could feel the music in their bones. The last note lingered. Silence fell, heavy and full. Then the audience erupted into applause, though Jay and Camila needed none of it. Their eyes met, smiling with the quiet joy of two worlds bridged, of a sound lost and finally found. As they packed up, Camila whispered, "We found each other in the music." Jay nodded, "And we'll never let it go." The end. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.